Hey everybody, Happy New Year Eve, New Year's Eve. Tomorrow is New Year's. Nothing like screeching in at the last minute to get in my last December video. But anyway, we're getting it done. We've had a good, busy, but relaxing holiday break, so it's been nice. But what we're doing today is we're going to make lasagna, classic homemade lasagna. The list of ingredients looks overwhelming, but don't let it freak you out. And sorry about the sun back there. Although we have sun. We have sun. It's been kind of gray and warm, but gray and so I'm pretty excited about the sun. But anyway, I already browned my meat. So like I mentioned, the list of ingredients may be a little big, but it's super simple to get everything prepped. And then you're just layering it up. So we'll jump into it. The recipe calls for 1 pound of ground pork and a half a pound of ground beef. And I know you're going, you and your half-pound ground beef recipes. I don't know, it's just the way it works. But like I've mentioned before, you can take a pound, let it thaw enough to cut it in half, and then pop the other half back in the freezer. That works great. I do that a lot. Then when you make hamburger steaks, you have a half pound. You make meatloaf, you have a half pound. You're good. What I'm doing today is I'm doubling the recipe. I promised my grandson, one of my grandsons, he loves my lasagna. So I promised him for his birthday that, yes, was in June. I know, I'm pathetic. It's been 6 months that I would make him some lasagna. So what I'm doing is I'm making him two. I'm going to do, because he told me I owed him interest. So I thought, I'm going to make him 2 pans. And then one recipe will do more than one of these because it does a 9 by 13 and it's full and it's thick and it's good. So I'm doubling the recipe. I'm going to do his doubles. And then I've got a couple of my little small snapware pans that I like to put stuff in and pop in the freezer. And I'm going to do 2 of those, pop it in the freezer for us, because that's about 4 good size servings. So whenever I feel like lasagna, I just pull one out. That rocks, doing it this way. Another thing you can do if you double the sauce is make 1 pan of lasagna and then use the rest of the sauce for spaghetti sauce, because that's basically what it is. And it is a fantastic flavor and it's thick, which I like spaghetti sauce. I don't know what the deal is with that hair sticking straight out. I like spaghetti sauce that sits on top of my pasta, not runs through it into the plate. So anyway, this does that well. But enough of all that. I'm going to flip the camera over and we're going to get busy. Okay, so what we've got here is the ground pork, the ground beef, a quarter cup of trilogy. I'll get it out in a minute. And I'm going to tell you the single recipe ingredients that you'll see in the recipe itself. So a quarter cup of trilogy. And then last night, I mixed my ground pork with 2 tablespoons of Italian sausage seasoning mix. Now, you can buy Italian sausage, either loose or in the links, and then cut it out of the link. That works as well. I mean, it works great too. But as I've mentioned before, I prefer to have just plain ground pork and put my own seasonings, because I make seasoning blends super easy. I actually had to make some this morning because I didn't have enough of the Italian sausage seasoning made. And it's literally just measuring and dumping some seasonings to make a blend. Then you know exactly what's in it. So anyway, I won't get on that high horse today. But I browned it. So that's your first step. Super simple. Then you're going to add in some different herbs. And I've already measured them out, most of them, all but one. I'll explain in a minute, just for sake of time. Y'all don't need to watch me measure herbs. But it's 2 teaspoons of sugar, a tablespoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of basil, a half a teaspoon of fennel. We're going to get to that in just a second. And then a quarter teaspoon of pepper. So we're just going to sprinkle that in here. And I know you may be thinking, ooh, sugar? You just need a teeny bit of sugar to kind of balance the acidity of the tomatoes. It doesn't make your sauce sweet. I'm not a big sweet. Some Italian sauces are really sweet. I don't like that. But I do like that acidity just balanced a little bit. Then you're going to add 28 ounces of diced tomatoes. Oh, are you kidding me? Or If you're a dodo like I am, you can use tomato sauce. It's not going to hurt anything, but that wasn't my intention. That's what I get for not paying close enough attention when I'm ripping things out of my cabinet. So my diced tomatoes are a little more pureed. And again, flavor-wise, it's not going to change anything. Texture-wise, it'll be a little different. And again, since I'm doubling. And see, even my favorite Bio Nature, I absolutely love this brand. My favorite brand of diced tomatoes from this company, there's not big, huge chunks. So that's one thing I was going to mention. If you have really big chunks in your diced tomatoes, I would recommend pulsing those in your food processor just a little bit to kind of get them to that. Personally, I don't like crunching down on a big chunk of tomato in my lasagna or my spaghetti sauce. If that's okay with you, don't worry about it. But if it's not your favorite thing, then I would not do that. Then we need 12 ounces of tomato paste. And yes, I actually have tomato paste. So I've showed y'all this little trick before in opening tomato paste where you take the lid off, open it all the way around, flip it over, and I know you can't see this in the video, but you know how to run a can opener, I'm assuming. Flip it over and open the other end, and then, hope it breaks through, just push it straight down. So you pull this off, and then you just push this straight through and grab your little, and that's all there is to it. So much easier, than trying to scrape tomato paste out of a little tiny skinny can. So we'll put 12 ounces of tomato paste, and then this is going to simmer 20 minutes. And this is our sauce. Again, it makes a fantastic spaghetti sauce, but it works great for lasagna as well. So I'm going to get the rest of the paste in here and then move the camera over because I want to show you one little trick on fennel, and then this will simmer for 20 minutes. Okay, the one other ingredient we need in our sauce is a teaspoon of fennel. Now, fennel is, in my opinion, kind of the key to good Italian sausage. And you see they're little, let me get that in the camera, they're little bitty seeds. I don't like to put those seeds straight in there because I don't really want to bite down into that. So what I will do, I've already got my sauce started on the simmer, which doesn't hurt anything. So I measure out my teaspoon and then get a really good sharp knife and just put your hand over and kind of rock your knife around. And see, I don't know if you saw some of those little seeds come squirting out. It's important. If you just start doing this, they're going to fly everywhere and you're going to have a big mess and be really aggravated. But if you just put your hand over it and kind of just run it around like that. Let me turn this sauce down. Okay. And then, just pull it back and kind of look, and you can see where you've got some bigger seeds. Now, if you're doing, if I'm doing a tablespoon, which I did earlier for my Italian sausage seasoning blend, I put it in a little coffee grinder I have that I've, reserved strictly for spices. I'm not going to do fennel in it and then turn around and put coffee in it. That'd be kind of, sausage flavored coffee would be disgusting, I think. But if you just have a teaspoon, to me, it's not worth the trouble of dirtying the dish. And plus, a teaspoon just kind of flies around. It doesn't really get into the little grinder or spice grinder blades. But a tablespoon, you just pulse, and it grinds it right up real quickly. Now, this isn't something that I would do like in advance, like take a whole jar, mince it with your spice grinder, dump it back in there and let it sit in the cabinet unless you use fennel pretty regularly. Because the more surface area you have on an herb, the more air gets to it, the more oxidation, the quicker it loses its potency and flavor and blah, blah, blah. So keeping it as whole as possible just, lengthens the shelf life of it. So, all right, we got a few little bitty bits in here. So we'll get those finished. I'm going to dump them in my sauce. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to use my little spatula here. And we're going to let this simmer covered for 20 minutes. Now, while that's happening, oh, I just made a big fat mess. Well, that's fantastic. We will mix up our ricotta. Mix it with an egg and some parsley, and that's a layer. Make sure our cheese is all shredded and ready to go. Get our Parmesan shredded up. And then I'm going to give you a little tip on some pasta noodles. Okay, lasagna is basically 4 layers. You've got your sauce, which we just made and is simmering over here. You've got a ricotta mix, which we're fixing to do. You have your cheeses. So I've got my mozzarella and Parmesan cheese. And again, I'm doubling, so just kind of keep that in mind. And I think I mentioned a minute ago we needed a teaspoon of fennel. That's doubled. If you're making one recipe, it's a half teaspoon. So if you follow the volumes and measurements on the actual recipe and maybe not what I'm saying, it'll make a perfect single pan, 9 by 13. Sorry, your layers. The sauce, the ricotta, the cheeses, and your noodles. So, up to this point, we are gluten-free and dairy-free with our sauce. Using a gluten-free noodle and Jovial brand is the absolute best, in my opinion. Is very easy to do. And we'll get to those in just a minute. Now, making it dairy-free. This was always a challenge for me, and then I figured out a little workaround, and it's the only way I make it now. So your ricotta layer is going to be an egg, 16 ounces of ricotta, hold that thought, and a tablespoon of parsley. So for our doubled recipe, we've got our 2 eggs, we've got our 2 tablespoons of parsley, and then we're going to need 32 ounces of ricotta. What I use instead of ricotta is yogurt. And this just happens to be an organic dairy yogurt that I had in this jar. So I'm using this for my first 16. But the way I kind of stumbled into this, when I was making lasagna initially at the restaurant, again, the gluten-free was super easy. The dairy-free I was having a little more trouble with. I could not, through all my wholesale resources, find a dairy-free ricotta. If it exists, I could never find it. So I'm going to say it doesn't exist. But like I said, I could never find it. So I thought, well, shoot, I got to substitute something. It's like, well, yogurt's kind of tangy, kind of got, it's creamy. Let me try that. That's all I've ever used ever since, is yogurt. The taste is the same. You can't really tell a difference. You can't tell a difference. The texture may be a teeny bit different because ricotta is a little more kind of grainy and the yogurt is real smooth. Other than that, it's the same. So I always have yogurt in the fridge. I don't always have ricotta. So that's why I just started doing yogurt, and I've done it that way ever since. So again, since I'm doubling, I need another 16 ounces of ricotta, in air quotes. Now, one thing also to keep in mind is if you're doing it dairy-free and you're using a dairy-free yogurt, I'm not. This is a organic, grass-fed, I'm pouring it, yogurt that I've got. I can't even think. But if you're doing dairy-free, I would also add in a couple tablespoons of nutritional yeast. That just kind of gives the dairy-free more of a dairy flavor. So, using real dairy, cow's dairy or goat or sheep, whatever you happen to be using, you don't really have to do that. All right, so here's my other 2 cups. So I'm going to mix this up, and this will be my next layer. And then I'm going to give you a little tip on some how to do these pasta noodles, and then we'll be ready to get busy layering. So all we got to do is just mix this up really well, and a spatula is not exactly the appropriate tool to use, but it'll work. All right, so I'm going to get this mixed. We'll set it off to the side, tell you a little bit about some pasta noodles, and then we'll get busy layering. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Since I'm making 2 pans for my grandson and 2 pans to stay home, these 2, this bigger and this little bit smaller, in area is going to equal about a 9 by 13. I've done this enough. I just kind of know that from playing around. So I'm going to do this as one recipe, and then I'll get another set of these pans and do another recipe. So that way, as we're going through the layers, I'm talking one recipe to y'all, and I'm not screwing it up for you and getting you confused. And on that note, I did leave out of the ricotta mix the salt. One recipe needs a ½ teaspoon of salt. So I threw that in when I realized, I don't know where my brain is today. I know when my husband gets back from the feed store and I get done with this, we're going to go out and do some work on our chicken coop. And I guess I'm thinking about that. But anyway, not what I need to be doing. So back to the jovial noodles. One thing about lasagna pasta is most pastas say you want to boil this on the stove for a few minutes before you use it. Jovial says no boiling required. Boiling the noodles is not required. So what I have found, and I've played with this for a long time, I love these noodles, but I don't 100% love them when they're not a little bit softened. So what I'll do is get a metal pan. I've just got a big Dutch oven. Fill it halfway with hot water out of the sink. It's not boiling. And put some noodles in here while I get ready to use them. One recipe is 9 ounces, which is what this package is, and it's 12 noodles. You're going to do 3 layers of 4. So that works out perfect with our little package here. So I just let these noodles soak in the water a little bit. I have just personally found they do a little bit better when they just have a little bit of soak. They don't have to be boiled. That's a whole nother level of boiling them and finding a place to lay them while they drain, and it's kind of complicated. This is super simple. I'm trying to get that. There we go. All right, now we're going to do our 3 layers. So we're going to go through each of these things in 3 layers. So the first thing you're going to do is approximately a 1.5 cups of sauce on the bottom. So like we've talked about before, when doing layering dishes, I may be a little scant, little less on my bottom layer because gravity is going to do its work and pull things down. So if I have extra, I'd rather it be on the top layers than on the bottom because it's going to go down. But if your bottom layer is super thick and your top layer is really thin, it's just not, to me, it's not as good. So we'll put that in here. And I'm just keeping it super simple because this pan is about a half of this. So I'm just taking whatever the layer is and dividing it by 3 and doing 2 in this and 1 in this. So if that's not confusing enough, it's a 1.5 cups of sauce. So I did a cup here and a ½ cup here. And we'll just keep going up with each layer. And I'm not going to sit here and make y'all watch me do these layers all 3 times. But, so we do a half layer of that. A layer of that. And then we're going to start putting in our noodle layers. And I just kind of shake them off and see how you can see. I don't know, maybe you can see that. It's kind of starting to soften up. That's what I like to see. And I always break my noodles. May not be necessary. It's just the way I've always done it. So we're going to get some out of the bottom here. And it's 4 layers per noodle. How about 4 noodles per layer? That was kind of dumb. So that's 2. And I just kind of puzzle piece them in there. 3. Now this one, and it doesn't hurt my feelings any because less pasta is fine with me in any pasta dish. I like pasta, but I like the meat and the cheese better. So there's our 4 noodles. So after you get that done, you're going to do more sauce. So again, it's 1.5 cups. And the 3 layers, it's like you lay down a little, I don't know, padding with your first layer of sauce. And then you're going to go noodles, sauce, ricotta, shredded cheese, mozzarella, Parmesan. And then noodles, sauce, ricotta, mozzarella, Parmesan. And do that 3 times. So back to a little bit of sauce. And again, I'm doing these kind of scant because they're on the bottom. And we'll just smear that around. One thing I always try to do is make sure all my corners of my pasta, my edges, are covered. And it makes a lot more, it's a lot more important to do that once you get up in the higher layers, because you don't want to have pasta sticking up out of the sauce because it's just going to get kind of burned and crunchy and nasty, and you want it to be saucy and cheesy on top. All right, so now we need 1/2 cup of ricotta. Let me get another measuring. I'm going to do it with 1/4, and so I'll do like a little scant of 1/4 there. Another pretty scant one here. And then one over here. And it may not look like a lot, but as you get these layered up, oh my gosh, it's really, really nice. Sorry, my arm in the camera, that's wonderful. And then again, you just kind of want to spread this around. And you don't have to worry about it being perfect and oh my gosh, every square inch covered, because as it bakes, it's going to, settle and bubble around. But you do want to do your best to get it smoothed out pretty good. Just don't worry about perfection necessarily. So when you serve, every serving gets every bit. Okay, now we need 1/2 cup of mozzarella. And I have always done it this way. I just kind of eyeball. I've known just from doing this so many times that a good handful is 1 cup. So I just do kind of a thick pinch. And then that gets and then for our Parmesan, we need 1/4 cup, and 1/4 cup is actually 4 tablespoons. So I'm just going to do this with tablespoons. And actually, just for simplicity, I'm going to do 3. So my layers, again, may be a little slight, but by the time I get to the top one, it'll be a little thicker. And since this is a layered dish and it's slicing down, it all works out evenly. So that's 1 layer. Now we're going to do that 2 more times. So I'm going to do my noodles, my sauce, my ricotta, my mozzarella, and my Parmesan. So I'm going to go ahead and do my 2nd layer and not bore y'all. Although I will tell you this, I always do my noodles kind of crisscross in my layers. So that makes sure that, if you do them all this way, then you're going to have gaps. But if you kind of mix up the blocks and how you lay it out, then you don't have any gaps, or less gaps, I should say, in what you put together. Okay, so I'm going to finish this layer and then we'll be back. Okay, so I went ahead and started my other 2 pans because for me, trying to take a doubled recipe and then break it down into different size pans, if I had 2 9x13s, then everything would just be in half. But since I'm doing it this way, it's just easier for me to break it all down with each layer than try and do this and hope I judged right to have this. So we've got 2 full layers, and I started the third layer. The pasta's in there and the layer of spaghetti sauce or lasagna sauce. And when I got finished measuring out for my third layer, I had about a cup of sauce left. So I got it pretty spot on. And then I just divided that up. So that worked out real well. Now we're going to do our last layer of ricotta. So it's a half cup per layer. So I'm going to do a quarter here. And then with my other quarter, I'm going to do about 2/3 of that in this pan and the rest in this pan. So again, eyeballing, guesstimating. I'm going to have a little extra, and then we'll divide it up between all 4 pans. So there's a quarter. Here's a quarter. Do it about 2/3. So hopefully this isn't seeming too complicated, because if you're just making one straight recipe, then it's super simple. You measure it, you layer it, no big deal. I just have to overcomplicate everything. Okay, so now I've got another. I'm going to take this quarter, again, do about 2/3 and about 1/3. So this is just using up what's left. One of these days, if I learn how to do the fancy video work where you speed it up, you can sit here and watch me do the whole thing in hyperspeed. That's probably easier than stopping and starting the video, but this works too. So now we just smooth all this around. And this layer, on your third layer, you really want to make sure you get all the edges and you don't have any pasta sticking out. Because like I mentioned, it'll get hard and crunchy and it'll be not very appetizing. Nobody wants to bite down into a hard piece of pasta. That's gross. And if it's not covered in the sauce, then it's not going to soften up. And it just won't be as good. So I'm going to finish smearing this around, and then we'll come back to do our last step. Okay, when I finished up with the ricotta layer, I had about 1/4 cup left over. So again, we nailed it pretty good, and I just kind of eyeball divided that across everything. So now our last 2 layers are the shredded mozzarella and the Parmesan. So I'm just going to take what's remaining, spread it really well over each pan, getting as much area covered as I can, because it'll melt and spread and just be all yummy. And then I will pop lids on all of these. They're cool enough. They can go straight into the freezer, the 2 that I'm keeping for here. And I'll just put a little sticker label on them that says, lasagna, the date, and how to cook it. It's 375. I think it's 45 minutes covered and maybe 15 minutes uncovered, if I remember correctly. But again, it's in the recipe exactly. And then it'll be ready to go. But here is a key point to remember. If you keep it, like this is going to go in the fridge. I'm not going to bake it. I'm going to let my daughter-in-law do that, because that way it'll be just hot and fresh and, not reheated for my grandson for his 6-month late birthday present. But if you do that, or like if you're pulling it out of the freezer, what you want to do is let it sit on the counter all day. So like pull it out in the morning. If it's been in the freezer, then you may need longer than all day, probably overnight. Because you want it to come to room temperature before it goes in the oven. Because if you think about it, we're making this, the sauce was hot, the noodles were warm, the cheese was cold, and the ricotta, of course. But this is, pretty warm. It's going to go in the oven, and it's going to bake for that amount of time. If you're taking this straight from the refrigerator and going straight in the oven, it's going to take a lot longer, which is possible. I mean, you can do it that way. I just prefer to let it sit out on the counter, come to room temp, then put it in the oven. So just keep that in mind if you're going fridge to oven, or, more so if you're going freezer to oven. So that's it. I'm going to use what's left of this Parmesan on the one going to my grandson. And then for mine going in the freezer, I'll just add Parmesan when I pull it out to put it in the freezer. But that's it. I'm not going to worry, because I'm not baking these now, with showing y'all what it looks like when it comes out of the oven, because it looks like this, but it's cooked. And that's it. That is classic home style Italian lasagna with the twist of the yogurt. But if you want to use ricotta. It's fantastic, and that's great. It's just not something I have on hand typically. And I have all this other stuff. So I can make lasagna anytime I want, but it's always like, dang, I don't have any ricotta. Well, I typically have yogurt so that I'm good to go. So anyway, y'all give this a shot. Make it like this, stick some in the freezer, cook some, do whatever works for you. But throw some comments out there and let me know what you think. If you tried it, you like it, you changed it, what'd you do? I hope y'all have a fabulous New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and we'll see you in 2025.